today's webinar, SDL Tridion Sites 9 Technical Readiness. My name's Kate and I will be your host. With the upcoming release of SDL Tridion Sites 9, we're hosting a series of 5 webinars to introduce the new features and concepts, as well as help you gain the maximum benefits of the new version. This webinar is the first in this series. Your speaker today is Likhan Siddiqui, who's the lead architect for SDL Tridion Sites, and we expect today's webinar to last about 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, could you please pop them into the Q&A box, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. I'm now going to pass you over to Likhan to begin the presentation.
Hi, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. As Kate was saying, that today's webinar, what we will be focusing on getting ready to actually deploy Sites 9 and what would be the requirements, platform requirements for Sites 9. And we would also be going a bit into some upgrade strategies and some new features that we would be available in Sites 9. So starting with platform support for the content manager sites, this list actually is showing primarily the recommended platforms, so not the supported platforms. So for example, for Windows, we have 8.1, 10, 2012 R2 and 2016, I guess. Here, we don't have any others, but for example, if you look at .NET Framework, we do have additional 4.6.2 support, but that's not the recommended framework. So we do recommend on running on 4.7.2. For the databases, we still support SQL, Azure, RDS, and 2016 SP1 and 2017. And on Oracle, it is 11.204 and 12.201. But for Java, we have decided not to move to Java 9, but stick to Java 8 because the long-term support issues that we have with 9, because it is not a long-term support version. And the plan is to wait for the next long-term version of Java and then move to that one once that's available. But with the current time frame of the release, that is not happening. So that's why we are sticking to Java 8. Moving on to the UDP, or the previously called content delivery. So UDP is now our unified delivery platform that has similar OS support, but adds Linux, Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 6.9 and 7.4 to it. And the Java and the database servers are exactly the same, but we are also supporting Elasticsearch 5.5 and 5.6. And the reason for Elasticsearch support being added to the platform support is because of our shift of experience optimization from using Threadhopper as a backing engine to Elasticsearch. And we do have a technical webinar diving deep into that piece. But yeah, from a platform support perspective, I'm not gonna really go into those details. I'm really gonna talk about the versions. So that's platform support. Moving on, the supported upgrade paths are 2013 SP1 HR2, Web 8 with CU1 applied, and 8.5. Then, what are we doing about upgrades? I think since what we have been looking at very significantly is that there is a significant cost to upgrading a Tridion instance or for a short time SDL Web. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to see what can we do to make those steps and easier and cost effective going forward. So we set out with a few objectives. That what we want to do is reduce the upgrade cost, reduce the risk during an upgrade, make it easier to upgrade, and also a zero downtime upgrade. So these are essentially a couple of objectives that we set forth ourselves to say, okay, let's see if these are the objectives, what can we do in order to achieve these? We have actually done two significant things. So the first one is we have switched staged upgrade. So previously the staged upgrade was the content delivery environment first, but then the content manager following. We have actually switched that to content manager first and content delivery following. The reason being, if you see this sort of this block diagram, we can see that on most of our customer environments, what we do see is a limited number of content manager servers, but a huge number of content delivery servers. So if we do a staggered upgrade where the content delivery needs to be upgraded first, that means that you are actually trying to address the riskiest and the most complex environment, which means so there are multiple servers and there are also your actual web application is actually running on content delivery, so that's also more riskier. So by allowing you to do the content manager first, so we are essentially reducing the risk a bit. But as well, when we are looking at certain functionality that we are introducing or we will be introducing in the future, the functionality most of the time, actually, let's say 99% of the time, it starts at the content manager. So you would need the content manager to be upgraded and content delivery to follow. So an example would be, though we do not have this in Sites 9, but let's say we do add an out-of-the-box search capability. That search capability would need first some form of configuration on the content manager to say, okay, which fields do you want to be indexed? And they would also need to be added to the transport package. So we already see that the functionality or the configuration of those functionalities starts in the content manager side. So by doing the content manager first, you can have your content delivery environment following. But what you can also do is that once you upgrade your content manager, you can already start playing with the new features in the content delivery by deploying a completely separate content delivery environment with its discovery service and then just hooking up, and then it allows you to start playing with the features earlier and using your actual content rather than dummy content or some form of that. But that's you can basically start working on your DTAB street already. Then we have also introduced the rolling upgrade support. Now, without going into the real details, we can first let's quickly walk over what does rolling upgrades mean for Tridion Sites. So what does it mean is that if we see this very simple machines which are running the different parts of the system, so we have the content manager database, content manager servers, and then we also have the content delivery databases and the content delivery servers. They are running the Web 8.5 version. What we are able to do in real time is actually upgrade, let's say, the database. So we can upgrade the content manager database from 8.5 to Sites 9. And we still have our working Web 8.5 application, content manager application running on that Sites 9 database. What that allows us to do is, in essence, that once you do upgrade the database, you can either provision a different machine or upgrade one of the machines to Sites 9, and you can already start your testing process to see if all of your extensions, event systems are working properly. This gives you time to fix any issues if you do find them. Hopefully there are none, but even if you do find them, your existing authors are not really blocked by it because they can keep using the 8.5 system. And on the 9 system, you could also do this in a completely isolated fashion, like, okay, you will do a blue-green deployment, but a blue-green deployment would mean that you would actually need the full set of machines replicated. So if you are, hopefully, if you're running on a virtualized environment, but you would still need double the number of resources. Whereas if you do a rolling upgrade, you could only add a single VM or a bare metal machine and then start using that and see if everything is working. And if it is working, then proceed to the next step on deploying the other environments with the new version as well. And you can actually also have load balancer rules. So let's say if you do tie both of those instances while you are upgrading to the same load balancer, you potentially could create a load balancer rule to say, okay, 20% of the traffic is going to the 9, or a predefined set of users are going to 9 and a predefined set of going to 8.5. That's an implementation choice. So then once you have the content manager fully upgraded and you are happy, and we have we are then using the 8.5 content delivery stack, we can then start to do the same things, upgrade the content delivery database to Sites 9, and then leave the microservices running on 8.5. And then slowly you start replacing those microservices one by one to Sites 9 as well. And here, although we have locked sort of like, okay, content delivery, and we have 2 content delivery, but it could be a combination of the microservices. So you could have, you could start with, okay, I'm going to upgrade the discovery service first, and I'm going to upgrade the content service next. So, which means that you could have a system where you have the discovery service, which is 9, but the content service, which is still 8.5, and it's still serving your end application, web application. So once you are happy, once you're going through the process, at one point, all of these would be upgraded to 9, and hopefully you will have zero downtime on this entire upgrade process. Now, what are we doing? This, because we actually talked about those objectives and how are those objectives being addressed. As I said, that by ensuring that we require less redundant hardware and people, then by reducing the risk of actually doing the blue-green. So when you actually do a blue-green deployment, you are not actually so when you're testing not on live data. And then what you also have is you always have to ensure that you do migrate those delta content that has been created once during the time when you are creating the new environment with the new version. So all of those things are actually taken care of. And then it also becomes easier to roll back a version, because it was just a machine that had that specific version. You can just take it out of the load balancer and just deploy the old version of the machine. And that also adds us to easier for upgrade, because again, less infrastructure and less orchestration. And zero downtime means because you're not using a blue-green strategy, you don't need to put in a content freeze, and you actually have the live system and running tests on the live data set. Now, moving on, the support. So as we did discuss the upgrade paths is a bit broader. So we do support upgrade from 2013, but on a rolling upgrade, the rolling upgrade is only supported from the last GA release, which means for 9.0, the rolling upgrades can only be leveraged from 8.5. And then once, let's say, if we do have a 9.1 release, then it would also be possible to upgrade to 9.1 only from 9.0, not from 8.5. You can do an upgrade, but it is not going to be a rolling upgrade, which means then you do need to fall back to the previously used upgrade mechanisms. It could be a blue-green upgrade, it could be a canary, it could be some other models of upgrading that you have been already dealing with. And this rolling upgrade, it is also it has been only introduced since 8.5, which means that we cannot use rolling upgrades to upgrade 8.0 to 8.5, but we can use it to upgrade 9 from 8.5, and as I said, to 9.1 or 9x, the next release from only 9.0. Then moving on, so what we also did add is we added better high availability support on the content manager side, because previously there were quite a few data that was actually locally persisted on the content manager explorer. So for example, there were some icons, there were some other bits and pieces. So for example, like the The custom pages configuration, those were all XML that was actually on a local file system. They have also been removed. So local file system based persistent storage has been removed from CME and XPM. And also we have removed the local temporary storage for synchronization in Audience Manager. So now the full content manager, we can deploy them in a high availability fashion without ensuring that whenever we are creating a multimedia type or we are adding some of these information into using the CME, like creating a custom page, we don't need to replicate that information across the cluster. It is stored in a shared storage, which means that it's available for everybody. And then we also added the high availability support in deployer, but that was done in 8.5. But yeah, we have made significant improvement to the performance of a high available deployer, and then we are continuing to work on it. I think before 8.5 we could have it was not really a high available, like a master deployer which was running. It was sort of an active passive deployer, high availability, but now we have an active deployer that we can use. And finally, we have also added SAML support, so we can now leverage SAML 2.0 to do SSO using in our web UIs, which is available in CME and XPM. We do support both IDP and SP initiated scenarios, so the identity provider and the service provider initiated scenarios, so we do support both of them. We also support automatic user provisioning using group mapping. So for example, when you do create, when you have a group, you can configure that group to map to a group in an external system. And when the user logs in first time, the user would be automatically created into the system and all the group memberships would apply. So it's relatively simple. And yeah, we also added the XAML token expiration and renewal. So that's all happening at the back of the screen. So you don't really need to see it once you have logged in. So for example, when you're using, let's say, Azure AD with using XAML endpoints, you would probably be redirected there. But if you are already logged in because of some other application, maybe OneDrive or something else, we would just use that token and then get forwarded as soon as you have access to that application. So that not only goes for single sign-on, but indeed also for when the token gets expired, we will do the handshake automatically behind the scene and then renew the token and then continue working. And that's about it. So I think we'll move to questions and answers.
Great, so, thanks, Likhan. Yeah, so if anybody's got any questions, can you please pop them in the Q&A box and we'll be sure to answer them. We've got one that's come in, and it's, is the upgrade path from earlier versions, such as 2013, as straightforward?
I'm not sure what this straightforward means, but as I said, I think so upgrades from 2013 would be the same as we have had it, let's say 2013 to 8.5, and 2013 to 9.0 would be similar. But I think if it was 8.5, then we would be able to leverage the rolling upgrade. And going forward, this is what also the incentive that we are trying to put forward, that if you are on the latest version, upgrading to the next version is a lot easier versus upgrading from 2 major versions back. So, and this is going to be the strategy going forward for us as well, because we want to make it simpler and we want to make it easier, but at the same time, we also need adoption.
Okay, hopefully that answered the question. We don't have any other questions. I don't know whether there's anything key else we need to mention, Likhan?
No, not from my end. I think we already did mention, because the biggest thing is that the support on the rolling upgrades, which version do we support it from and which version do we support it to. So that's very key. But from our end, I think I did mention it, but I will repeat it. We are trying to really address the cost and the pains in upgrades, and we will continue to work on it, because there are while we are working on this, we do find issues. And what is also interesting, because we are also we are also experiencing these ourselves, because when we are running our cloud, we are experiencing a lot of these issues ourselves, and we would like to learn from it, and we would like to enable so that everybody can benefit from it. So in our cloud stack, we are already doing it. We have, I think there was also a webinar that was done a while back, and it's also available in our community site, where it actually showcases a running website with real-time ping test on the web application happening, and then we actually walk through the upgrade of the entire Tridion system, including the content manager and the content delivery side.
Great, thank you. We've got some more questions that have come in, so we'll just go through them. Is the publisher now scalable, or does it still write to local file system? An S3 option has been requested and would help us a lot trying to make publishers more transient.
I'm not. Actually, this is a bit confusing as well, because the publisher has always been scalable, but the publisher, so a single publisher deals with a single published transaction. So if the question is that can multiple publisher deal or split up the job of a published transactions, no, it can't. But the publisher, a single publisher will deal with a single published transactions, and then once processed, it is going to be sent for transport to the deployer. But I think if you could follow up with a bit more specific questions, or that would actually, I would be able to answer that a bit better.
Okay. The next question is, are the rolling and staged upgrades mutually exclusive? If not, how can they be combined?
They are not mutually exclusive at all. I think as the slides actually did show, that we did do a staged upgrade, right? So we did do the basically the content manager first, and then the content delivery following. So we actually went through and then upgraded all of the services in the content manager, all of the instances, and then moved to the content delivery. But that doesn't mean that what you could potentially do is, as I was saying earlier as well, that once you have the content manager upgraded, you could probably also start using a newer version of the content delivery stack, and then publish into it and keep the existing 8.5 running, and that would give you more control and ability to test things simultaneously.
Okay, thank you. Is there an overview of all supported prerequisites, as the webinar only showed recommended?
Yeah, so I think close to the release, we will that would be available in our documentation, because in the documentation it does show all the supported platforms. But to go back, I think there was not much that was left, because the biggest thing that was left was indeed the .NET version. We did cover the OS and the database server. So the database servers that was mentioned and the operating systems that was mentioned, those were all shared in the webinar. The .NET Framework version was not shown, and I think for the Elasticsearch, that's also the full support. And I think if we are looking at .NET Framework, the .NET Framework version that is supported is, we are actually moving more and more towards Microsoft model, because Microsoft has recently, so for example, on a newer version of Windows, you can't even install a 4.6.2. You only have 4.7.2. So what we are really considering is also supporting forward compatibility of, let's say, 4x. So the platform support would essentially say anything with 4x from and onwards of 4.6.2. Because if they release a 4.8, by definition, Microsoft is actually doing Microsoft is giving us a forward compatibility guarantee on that. So that's what we will also pick up.
Okay. Will it be possible to have different configuration on two different load balance CM servers if needed? For example, two different logging locations?
Yes. So I think I'm not sure. This is a very interesting question, right? Because at the same time, it is right now possible because the configuration files are not really centralized. Though for some reason, for some scenarios, it actually can be very helpful, but it is also very painful because if we do want to change it, we have to change it in multiple servers. So, but in short, it is how it was, so it is possible. So the configurations on two different machines are still different. And that is also applicable when you are upgrading, because when you are upgrading, you might have some new configurations which the 8.5 doesn't need.
I think the next question relates to the earlier one where you asked for more information. It says the problem is that we have many publishers, but if they're rendering now and then deploying, say, in 7 days, that publisher may have been taken out or scaled out of service. At the moment, we have to prevent those coming out of scaling out of service if they have pending split published jobs waiting to deploy at a later date.
Okay, I think that sort of gives me a bit more understanding of the problem. But it's a good feedback. I think we do need to take a bit more look and then provide a bit more concrete answer. But we have done some improvements on the publisher, basically for resiliency. So what would happen is that when you are taking them out of service, if you actually stop the publisher service itself, the publisher service is going to put the message back into the queue. And then I think it would work. But as I said, I think we would need to do a bit of a validation. But the publisher service, what it can do right now is that even in mid-flight, so let's say if the publisher is actually doing something and you stop the publisher gives a grace period to the processing transaction. And if the processing transaction does not finish within that time, the publisher actually puts it back into the queue and basically shuts down. So if you are using the publisher Windows service shutdown, then it would do gracefully, but we can't still deal with non-graceful failures. And I think it might actually help you achieving what the question was, but I can't really say it with a guarantee because I don't think we actually did test the delayed deployment scenario. We did test in flight, but I think the delayed one, I have to double check because I'm not sure of all the test cases. But maybe, yeah, we can actually, I think probably do a follow-up questions somewhere, and we can reach out, and then we can really discuss that.
Okay. Is there a need to update on DXA 2.0 on Java?
If the question means that do we need to update, the answer is no. But yeah, I think going forward, we should always try to upgrade to the latest, greatest version. But yeah, it's not a mandatory requirement.
Okay, and we've got one further question. Are there other requirements on database scaling and or presentation server scaling as in 8.5?
Are there requirements on database scaling? I am also not sure of the question, but but let's say for database scaling, there are no additional prereqs or requirements than we have had with 8.5. But we do, I think, moving on to these cloud-based databases, let's say Azure SQL and Azure Elastic SQL. So Azure already provides compatibility between SQL and Elastic SQL. So that would potentially scale pretty well, and also on a hot database. But from SDL perspective, there has not been any specific changes that was done, or any change in the requirements for databases from 8.5 to 9, other than adding additional database as supported platforms.
Okay, great. Thanks, Likhan. That seems to be all the questions that have come in.
So, thank you very much.
Okay, I just want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. We hope you found it useful and informative, and we look forward to welcoming you on one of our future webinars. Please don't forget to take a look in the links and attachments section on this webinar, where you can find details of the other 4 webinars in this series. Just want to say thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.